Hello and welcome again to Inking on the Fly with me, Amy Jasper. I'm so glad that you have joined me today to learn a new technique. This particular card is super exciting for me because it's a pop-up card. Doo-doo-doo! How fun is that? I love it. So this design is an adaptation from a design that I found on Mitosu Crafts. So I have taken their design and adapted it and I think made it a little bit simpler. So I'm hoping that you will enjoy this project as much as I did. Okay, so the front of the card is pretty simple because the inside has a little more going on. So let's start with the inside first, and then we can finish with the simplicity of the outside. So for the inside of the card, we have a card base 11 inches wide or long, 4¼ inches high. So we can just start with the standard folding of the card base. And then opening of the card base because it's easier to make the inside when you have it open, right? Silly, 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 silly. Okay. So we have a few pieces to create the mechanism of this card. So we have the inside layer, which we will have all of our pieces for. Set that aside so we can work on that. I've got my inside pieces. Or the outside pieces, sorry, we'll put those out of the way. Okay, and then we have our mechanisms for the inside of this card. So I have a piece of cellophane, like it's really malleable, really flexible piece of cellophane. This is from Stampin' Up's clear envelopes. So they have the medium envelopes in the clear. I just cut it up. This is 2 inches wide by 2½ inches long. That's going to be our mechanism for the flip part. On the other side, we have a piece of thick basic white, and I've scored it at 1/2 inch. Sorry, this, I'll tell you the measurements, that would help, right? 2 inches by 3 inches. And then I've scored it at 1/2 inch, 1 inch, and then 2 inches, or this way, 1 inch, 2 inch, and 2½ inch, whichever way you think. This piece we're going to fold valley, mountain, valley fold. So I'll go ahead and do that. So valley on the 1/2 inch side, mountain, and valley. So it's going to look like that. Okay, but we need to make sure those creases are all really well done, because everything folds nicer and moves better with well creased folds. So then we have that, but we only need this crease in the middle. Isn't really going to stay folded. We're going to flatten that out. Okay, so it's going to look like that. And then on that flattened outside, we're going to put adhesive on this 1 inch panel on this side here. So I'm going to use my liquid glue. Okay, like that. And that is going to go on the inside of our card, centered up and down vertically. And then it's going to tuck right beside our fold, right beside our crease line, and hopefully be everything perpendicular and parallel and squared off, and still be able to fold your card without anything getting in the way. So it's kind of like that. So you can see it's only attached on that 1 inch section. Okay, so then I can put some adhesive on this flap here. So there's glue on that flap there, and that I'm going to make sure everything is tight and snug together, all folded nice and neatly together. And then that's going to lay flat or tucked under like this. I'll give you a close-up of that as well, like that. So that just creates a little ramp. So those two middle sections that are not attached to anything, that wants to lift up and create a little ramp. But when I close my card and there's resistance, it holds, everything will still lay flat. Okay, so that's my little ramp, and that will allow this piece here, see how it's lifted up? It will allow that to lift up so that you get that dimension, that sort of floating inside panel, and that kind of matches the sides. So that makes, it's a cool effect. So I like that. So that's what that is. Okay. Awesome. Then we can do the side mechanism. And so this is, these two elements are the things that I've changed up a little bit from what they did on Mitosu Crafts. So I'm using a piece of that clear envelope, and I'm going to use, for this, I'm going to use my tear and tape. So what I need is a piece of tear and tape, just the 2 inches long, because it's going to go right on one edge of my 2 by 2.5 inch piece. It's so hard to see because, of course, the clear envelope is, guess what? It's clear, so it's hard to see. So I'm going to just put it against this so you can see what I did. So I have the tear and tape right up snug to the edge of one of the two. It's the 2 inch wide edge. Okay, no tape over each side, although that doesn't matter so much on this element, but usually with any kind of pop-up card, you don't want any tape sticking where it should not be sticking. You don't want it sticking where it has no business sticking, right? So we can peel off that backing, and then this is going to attach, again, centered vertically. It's going to attach to the card base so that it is flush right flush with the edge of our card. Okay, like so. That's going to be our pop-up mechanism. So then we can carry on. We're going to add another piece of tear and tape. It's going to go the full length of our card, covering up that same thing, and again being as close as you can make it to the edge of the card. I wouldn't go any farther away than I did. You want to be pretty close. And then you need, oh, where's my other piece? I'm missing a piece. And then you need your piece of thick basic white. This measures 2 1/8 wide by 5 inches long. And then I've scored it at 3/8 of an inch and something, 3/8 of an inch from the other side. I can't remember the measurement. 4 7/8. No, my bad. 4 5/8 from this end. 3/8 of an inch from both sides. And then we can just do a little quick trim of those corners, because when we fold that underneath, it will help those corners to be a little tidier. And I just do all 4 of them. And then we can fold those tabs under, those 3-inch tabs, and give them a good burnishing with your bone folder. Make sure those creases are nice and crisp. And then again, we can take out our tear and tape and apply tear and tape to those flaps. And you don't want, this is one of those ones where you don't want any sticky bits to be exposed anywhere because it might affect the workings of our mechanism. So we'll trim those off. Make sure I don't have anything sticking out. There we go. Okay, so then we can peel off all of our backing pieces. And then we want to tuck those flaps underneath and attach this to our card base so that it's flush. The two edges are flush with one another on the end of our card base. And then we want it to be tidy at the top and parallel with the top as well, which can be difficult when you're using tear and tape. That's why I usually like to use my Tombow liquid glue, but with moving parts, I'm not always patient enough with my Tombow liquid glue to make sure that it will have time to really set well before I start moving the card. So it's good to use okay, this is tricksy. There we go. Okay, so I'm a little bit over, I'm not quite exactly flush, but at least I'm parallel. So I have that, I've got a little bit farther over than I really want it to, but I can feel there's no tear and tape exposed, so I think I'm still good. You don't want any tape exposed. And it's straight, that's really the main thing. You want everything to be as straight as you can when you're doing any kind of pop-up. So that's kind of the starting point of your working mechanism. One last thing on here before we move on to the insert is we're going to add a piece of tear and tape to our 2-inch section of that clear envelope that's popping out. I'm going to add tear and tape there, and I'm going to put the tear and tape as close, without touching, as close to that sleeve as I can. And if you burnish that tear and tape, it'll be easier to get that backing off later. So you can see I am super close, but not touching the sleeve, but super close. And I don't have any, oh, I do have a little bit. You don't want to make sure you don't have any of your adhesive over the edges once again, because you want to make sure that everything moves smoothly. I barely have a bit there sticking up. Carefully so you don't cut your clear envelope piece. There we go. Okay, so then that's almost ready. We can also add a couple of pieces of tear and tape to the ramp that we created. The ramp, you could probably get away with Tombow liquid glue on this section if you wanted to. Again, I like the tear and tape because I know it sticks nice and fast, holding things in place, and I don't have to be patient and wait before I start moving things. Okay, so that's all of that ready for the next step inside. But before we do the next step with all of that, we're going to assemble our inside piece. So for that inside part, so this is going to be the flipping out part here. To assemble that, we have a piece of basic black. This measures 11 inches long by 3 1/4 inches wide. And then I've scored it at 3 1/2 and 7 1/2 inches. So we can fold on those score lines. I like folding things before I start gluing stuff down just because it helps me to be sure that everything's in the proper place. It gives me more of a visual, just in case my score lines are crooked or something like that, right? So in the middle, we have a piece to put in the middle of basic white. This measures 3 1/8 by 3 7/8. This is the piece we can write on or stamp a sentiment or something like that. And then we have our pieces of patterned paper to put on each end. So these measure 3 1/8 tall by 3 3/8 wide. So you've got your 2 little ice cream parts, and then we have, you can either use the stripy pattern or the blotchy watercolor pattern. I like the stripes, so I'm going to go with that. That's going to go on the back of the end of your panels here. The back of that last panel. And I don't mind that it doesn't have an edge on this end. That's okay. That's going to tuck underneath anyways. All right, so that was easy, right? We'll just get our other piece again. So this is back to our card base with all of our mechanisms happening here. So now we need to attach this insert piece to our mechanisms on the inside of our card. So we'll start by attaching the left side. So we can peel off these 2 tear and tape strips. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our 3 panels. We're going to fold the 2 panels all the way to the left so that we have that happening. So that's our panels. We're going to attach the edge of this end of this panel, the folded section, so that it lines up with this score line. It's not going to line up with the middle score line. It's going to line up with this 1-inch score line on our ramp so that it only adheres to, it's going to cover up the ramp section of this mechanism piece on the left side here. So like this, and it's really important to make this is the one you want straight. So I'm going to use my grid paper to line it all up. It's a bit tricky, especially with, again, with the tape that sticks fast, right? So I want to make sure it's, as much as I can, it's going to be lined up and centered up and down on my paper, and it looks pretty good. There we go. So I really want to burnish that on there well. And you can see my ramp is working. Dun, dun, dun. So when you put it on its side, you can see how that's all attached in there. So there's the center of my card is there. And this piece is attached about 1 inch from the center to the left. Like so. Okay, we're almost done the inside. This is like all the hard stuff's done. Now we just have to peel off the backing of the tear and tape on this section. And then we're going to keep the card base flat, and then we're going to lay this side down and lay this down flat. And we know that tape is right under here. We can just give it a bit of a burnishing to really make that connect well. And I don't want you to lift this up and look underneath, because that's not going to work very well for you. What you want to do, now that you have it all together, is hold only on your card base and then gently close and open, close and open, and make sure your mechanism works. Dun, da, da, da. Right? How cool is that? It's not that hard once you know what you're doing. So that's looking pretty awesome. That's the inside. That's the hard part, you guys. Now we can do the outside part. Okay, for the outside, you will need, oops, so I've got a piece of Pool Party. This one measures 5 by 3 3/4. And that's going to go right in the middle of our card front. It's a little lumpy under there. That's okay. That's why we're not going to add a lot of bulk to the front of our card. We're going to keep it pretty simple. Okay, and then I have a piece of basic black, which I cut with one of the stitched scallop edged framelits from the Stitched So Sweetly dies from Stampin' Up. Super cute. This is the one that measures, when it's cut, it measures 2.5 by 3 5/8. We're going to, before attaching that, we're going to add some baker's twine. And we're going to loop it around 2 times, wrap it around twice, just to give a little something something to look at. And you can use those little notches to kind of give some variety in that movement, instead of, or in the, where the twine goes, instead of just having it straight across. It just gives a little more interest there. And then we can, whoops, tie it. I find baker's twine a bit challenging to tie, but we'll do our best here. It's just so floppy, you know? So this is the, oh my goodness, Blushing Bride baker's twine. It's in the, oh, what did I even do there? I forgot to tie a knot. I don't know what happened. Oh, yes, I can tie a bow. Thank you very much. Let's actually do a knot first, because that will make it work better. Then tie the bow. I have no idea what I did that first time. There we go. And I used that right off the spool, but it's about, I think it's about 24 inches probably. I think I cut a bit too much, or too little, when I made the packets. It was a bit tight. So if you find it a bit tight with what I gave you in your packet, then you might want to only wrap it around 1 time, so you can get an easier time of it when you tie your bow. So now that I've tied that, I can add that with my tombow. Because we don't want to add, normally I would use dimension. Oh, I don't want that yet. Don't do that yet. We have to do this first. We need our piece of designer series paper first. This is from the, oh, actually all the designer series paper is from the Ice Cream Corner Suite. This one measures, I've put adhesive on it, silly me. This one measures 4 1/4 by 1 1/2. So that's the Ice Cream Corner Suite that has the designer series paper, which is so cheerful. It is retiring though, unfortunately. Now I can attach this. I think my glue is still, maybe I'll add a little fresh glue. Some of it has dried a little bit. pop that on. We want about kind of an even border again of our designer series paper. I think I want this lower actually. There we go. Oh, why does it look crooked? There we go. And then, what else do we need? Oh, I'm missing some pieces, am I? We're going to add this piece. This is Sahara Sand. It is 1 inches by, well, finished. It's 1 inches by 3 3/4, give or take. But I die cut the end using the handy dandy Banners Pick-a-Punch from Stampin' Up. So I used it to cut that flagged end. Makes it super quick and simple. You can use any stamp set that works in there. So I have 2 samples that I did. This one uses the Peaceful Moments stamp from, what is it, in the main catalog? Yeah, Peaceful Moments. But I'm going to use the Sweet Ice Cream stamp set because of course that coordinates so nicely with the paper and the theme of this card. So I'm going to use this, but I'm going to, let's try the Treat Yourself one for this one. And I'm going to just use basic black to stamp with. So this is the Tuxedo Black Memento ink. We want to put it kind of pretty much center. Like that. And then we need to take another piece of our designer series paper. This is from that Ice Cream Corner designer series paper again, some beautiful watercolored ice cream. And we can just fussy cut around those ice cream cone, the ice cream cone and the scoops. I'm guessing this is what, pistachio and bubblegum maybe, and strawberry. Sounds pretty good to me. I guess it could be mint instead of pistachio. But I don't know what other ice cream is blue other than bubblegum ice cream. All right, so then we can lay this out and kind of get an idea of where we want things to go before we commit. So I want it to end up kind of like that. So I'll start by attaching the Treat Yourself sentiment first, just with liquid Tombow glue. That way I can use my ice cream cone as a guide for where I want to place it. And then make sure it's straight. And just the nature of having layers of paper, we have some lifting, makes it almost look like it's on dimensionals because it has a couple of layers underneath it. And then our ice cream cone, I'm going to put dimensionals on the top of my cone, on the scoops. But then I'm going to put liquid Tombow glue underneath the cone part so it can be flatter, because I want to tuck that underneath my baker's twine. like this. Like that. I kind of want my bow to be moved over, so I'm just going to do that. I want it to be moved over so that it's over top of my ice cream cone. I really don't like tying baker's twine though. Whew. There we go. We'll trim that tail down and we've got ourselves a really cute card. Am I right? So here we have another pop-out card. And it's important when you open the card, or when anybody opens the card, that they're not holding this part. Like, it's just not gonna work. It works, but it's not gonna work as well. I think most people hold the corners. I don't know. Test it out. The best people to test it out on are your dads. I know that's who I test my cards out on with, is my dad. So there you go. So here's a couple of, here's some variations of this one. So we've got a treat yourself and a happy birthday that are both from the sweet ice cream stamp set. And then we have a happy birthday that's from the Peaceful Moments stamp set. And what else was I going to say? I think that was it. So there you have it. That's your flap, pop-up flap card adapted from Mitosu Crafts. So thanks for watching and have a great week.